Hi everyone, welcome back to another interview series. My name is Mher from Newfoundland and Labrador, and today I have the privilege to interview Peg Hunter from Toronto. Hi Peg, how are you doing?
I'm here. Fine. How are you?
I'm doing great, thank you for being here. So, Peg is a seasoned executive and a board leader whose leadership philosophy centers on building engaging teams, valuing diverse perspectives, and delivering meaningful change. A proud 1982 alumni of Memorial University Faculty of Business, she began her career in consumer packaging goods, marketing, before advancing into senior executive roles with iconic retailers including Canadian Tire and the Home Depot. Known for uncovering strategic insights and leading complex cross functional initiatives, PEC has driven digital transformation in large retail environments, strengthening customer centered operating models, and shaped strategies to defend against emerging competitive threats. So, Peg, my first question for you is in this competitive market that we are living, we know the value of networking. That's how we met in a networking event. Now we
Yeah.
are
Yes,
here.
we did.
So, how can people approach networking? For some, they are very scared. How can I approach someone that I don't know? Any ideas, tips from your experience that you can give to the audience?
Well, the first tip I guess I can give is don't undermine your own value. In any kind of an exchange, in any kind of relationship, be it networking or anything else, it's a two-party system at minimum. And I think sometimes when people are just entering the job market, for example, they tend to undervalue what they bring. And I think they need to appropriately understand their value relative to the situation,
Mm-hmm.
but don't undermine it because, when you look at someone at my advanced age, for example, I don't have the same kind of technology intelligence
Mm-hmm.
that someone Gen Z might have right now. And quite honestly, could use that. So don't underestimate yourself. Just understand what your value is
Mm-hmm.
and how you bring it. And networking itself, as you know, I'm sure you've had the statistic before, is that 70 to 80% of
Yeah.
all available opportunities
Yeah.
are filled through referral
Yeah.
and networking or relationships.
Yeah.
And so if you're not using your network or you're not creating a network, then you're basically missing out on all those opportunities. Apply online for sure, but the value of a network really increases your chance of success exponentially.
Those are great tips. And here in Newfoundland, it's a small market. Kind of everyone knows everyone. But still, for like immigrants, newcomers, international students, they're still hesitant
Mhm.
to approach whenever they are in a meeting. Any other ideas how to approach people?
Well, find some common ground. I mean, people are people, and they have some people are very charitable in what they do, for example, and they like to connect on that basis. And so I think if you can find the way to connect on the human basis, I
Hmm.
think that overcomes cultural or language concerns or anything of that nature. And so find those ways to connect and find those networks that feed into that and allow you to make those connections on a more, as I said, it takes two,
Yeah.
and it's person to person.
Yeah.
So it's finding that point of connection. I think
Yeah.
is key. I think a lot of people are hesitant if they don't. And Newfoundland, I grew up there. Believe me, it's a lot more open than it used to be. But at the same time, I can understand how people may feel that it's small, everybody knows everybody, and it's kind of hard to break in.
Yeah.
But I do find that once you do, it's very welcoming.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what your experience is, but
Yeah.
that's my interpretation of the experience.
Yeah, I tell people whenever you're meeting or going to an event, maybe try to meet three new people and engage with them, ask about them, not about you. And as you mentioned at the beginning, networking takes time and it's building relationship and it takes maybe 3 to 6 months to ask for something in return. It's value driven and not make and don't make it transactional.
No, absolutely do not make it transactional, but also kind of know what you want. We might get into this a little bit more in terms of your branding, but we were at an event recently.
Yeah,
You and I were at the same event, and there was a speed networking session,
yeah,
which was a great session.
yeah.
but you had employers around the table, and then students would rotate between the tables, which was great. And as a potential employer sitting there, I was kind of astounded
Mm,
at the range of how people presented themselves. Some people had absolutely no idea what they wanted
mhm,
or what their strengths were or what they valued. And then others had it right down, almost rote. So along that spectrum, it's just it's those people who were just still authentic and not so
yeah,
scripted were the ones who really made an impression and really made an impression with all of the people around the table as prospective employees.
yeah,
So it was, you kind of have to understand what your story is
mhm,
and what you want from the interaction.
yeah.
So that's, I think, a key piece of it as well. And it was so obvious in that
Yeah,
event.
I tell people or the students I'm helping, people will help people they trust
Mhm.
and have something in common, as you mentioned earlier, and it takes time. Be your authentic self. Don't be a robot.
But absolutely don't be a robot. But you know what? I don't think it always necessarily has to take 3 or 8 months. I mean, it
Mm,
does sometimes, but
yeah,
even in that situation, and maybe it was because it was students who everyone knew were looking for roles, that there were connections made. So I don't have anything, but I know somebody who
yeah,
might.
yeah,
And so that's that. In Newfoundland, it's 3 degrees of separation, but the concept of 6 degrees of separation is a real thing.
yeah.
So you got to find your way through the path. That's why it's called a network, not a line.
Yeah.
It's a way through.
Those are great tips, Peg. Thank you very much. Again, for the audience watching or listening for the first time, if you have any other tips, you can leave them below. So tune in next time for other great question with Peg.